In this video we're going to take a look at how to play impossible chords. Every now and again you get a song which has a chord in it that you just think, how on earth am I supposed to play this? So we're going to look at a number of different chords that we may think seem impossible to play. One thing to keep in mind is really there is no such thing as an impossible chord. Chords are written out for people with 5 fingers or 4 fingers and a thumb to be able to play. So if there's a chord that you find that you think is impossible, it's not impossible. We just have to approach it differently to the way that we are. And depending on which level at guitar you are on, you will find different chords impossible. So to a beginner, the F chord is impossible. If you're advanced, an F chord is dead easy. Then it might be jazz chords or diminished chords, augmented chords. Might have you demented and think of them as demented chords as opposed to diminished chords. Then you've got jazz chords like the 13th chord, which may seem a little bit impossible. So we're going to look at different approaches and how to practice. Now the first one the beginner will find impossible is the dreaded F chord. I did a video on this some years ago on the dreaded F chord, which hardly anybody watched. But I thought it was an interesting way of how to practice the F chord if you're finding it difficult. Now the first mistake the beginner makes with the F chord is he's noticed that it's a case of having to bar. So logic would dictate, or it so would seem, that you get the most difficult thing out of the way first, which is to bar it. You know that you have to use a certain amount of strength to bar it. So you get your guitar, you bar it, you wrestle it to the ground to show it who's in charge. At which point you've used that much strength and energy. What these 3 fingers do is gone right out the window, and then you've tried a few cheat ways of doing it, which seemed even less productive. So how are we going to approach the F chord? Well, if you know anything about theory, we know that the F chord is really an E shape. And if you take it up a fret, you need a finger to bar that. So you're taking an E shape and barring it. But obviously, because of the way you've learned to do the E chord, you haven't got a spare finger here to be able to bar it. So what you have to learn to do, first things first, is be able to play an E shape with them fingers like that. So we want our middle finger, 2nd fret of the G, ring finger on the 3rd fret of the A, and tuck that little finger in there on the 3rd fret of the D. And you want to be able to get that first. And then you can think about lying your finger across the 1st fret. Now, we're not interested in wrestling the guitar to the ground, even if you mute them strings and you struggle with that. If you can get them fingers in that position, you have 50% of the F chord. Then we can worry about perfecting it. So a strategy for practicing it is forget about barring it straight away. That finger on the 2nd fret, your middle finger on the 2nd fret of G, ring finger, 3rd fret of A, little finger on the 3rd fret of the D, then lie your finger over. One thing to point out is when barring it, sometimes people try to bar like that and you find that the strings fall between the creases in your fingers and it gets sore, and when you're pressing down it's not effective. So we kind of want to learn to lie our finger a lot further along. Everybody's fingers are different, so try different things. I like to approach certain practice techniques almost the same way if you went to the gym or you were doing press-ups or pull-ups. You wouldn't do one and then move on to another exercise. You do them in sets of 10. So what I suggest with practicing this one is do that, put your finger down, take your hand off, recalibrate, do it again, put your finger down, take your hand off, get the shape, put your finger down. And we're not interested in strumming at this point. We just want to get our brain to get used to going to the correct shape. So often when people practice, they get the fingers in the right place, they then try to perfect the chord, and then when they take the hand off, they're right back to square one of trying to think what notes I want. Then they do it again, struggle around, make sure they've tried and it's clear, and then they don't practice anymore. They've given up because they've spent that long. So at first, you're just getting used to going to the right shape. Then, as a separate thing, when you get used to that, then we can look at getting the chord perfected. But it's being able to get to that shape straight away. One thing with bar chords is where our thumb goes. If you've been learning your open chords as a beginner, like the G, the D, the C, you can have quite comfortably get that with your thumb hooked over. But it's a kind of a bad habit to get into, because if we try to do an F chord with our thumb hooked over, your fingers automatically, when you think you can put your fingers like that, as soon as you bring your thumb round, your fingers automatically close up and you can't really move them. So my thumb is at the back there like that. Sometimes it gets to there. The focus of your attention should be on where these fingers are going, and your thumb is really just serving as a backstop so that you've got something to squeeze against. So when you get that chord down like that and you put your finger, you find where your finger wants to be, you then squeeze with your thumb, and you want it, right, in this case I've got my thumb there, and you want to be able to get your wrist so that your fingers are comfortable. Now, why do we spend so much time? Why would I suggest learning to do a bar chord like that instead of, the cheat F way, all the different ways of cheating it? It's going to open up a whole range of chords. If you can do an F, you can do an F minor, you can do an F7, you can do an F minor 7. If you can do them 4 chords, you can slide up and do an F sharp minor, F sharp 7, F sharp minor 7, G, G7, so on and so forth. And there's a whole host of chords. If you can do that, then you can do your B minor. If you can do your B minor, you can do your B minor 7. B7, you can slide them up with C7, C minor 7, and a whole host, hundreds of chords, all from being able to master doing that F. So that's the first impossible chord, or seems to be impossible, that you're going to get to grips with. As you progress, you will come across things like the diminished chord, which is and at first that seems really difficult to do. Now I remember first doing a song with the diminished chord in, and the first thing is that, it seems an unusual shape from all the shapes that you've learned. And the tendency is you go, that's the awkward note, I put my finger there, then I bar it, and when you're trying to change quickly to that, you end up getting a little bit lost. Then realised really what the diminished shape is. It's almost like a B flat 7 chord, which I would personally not even think about, just go straight to it, but then put your finger down there on the 2nd fret of the ear, like that. So now I would just do that, then put that finger there, straight forward. Or it's all about how you're looking at it. If you start going like that and like that, take forever. If you go to a well-known shape, the same can be said of the other diminished shape, that one. At first you can be going a little finger there, that one there, that one there, that one there. But if you look at that shape there, you take a D chord, and you've got a D there, but it's like a D played in the wrong position with your little finger on there. So that means you can go straight to it without too much fuss. The same can be said of the augmented chord, which at first seems very unusual, but really that shape, it's almost like you cheat F. If that was a cheat F, if you move it all in one string, you can get to it quite easily. When you don't look at it like that, you can be looking at it slightly differently, it becomes difficult to do. Now, 2 other chords that I wanted to look at were the C9 and the C13. Some people have difficulty putting the thumb over like that, but it's worth practicing and getting used to. So the C9, like that. So we've got to get almost like a D. When you think of D7, you've got a D7 shape there, and then you can lie them fingers flat. Or you can put your little finger like that. Personally, I put my thumb there and do that. And some people find that difficult, like I said, but if you bring your wrist round and get that over, you can get it. Then the little finger could move to there, which is a stretch for the C13. So that's how I would approach that, which isn't easy, and it will take an amount of practice, but not impossible. One of the most difficult chords that I ever saw was in, even now I'm struggling, from Every Breath You Take, which was like, in this case I'm doing it in G, a G7 chord, and then my little finger there. Is still one of the most difficult things I've ever tried to play. But if you get used to the G7 and then your little finger there, and it is a stretch, but the secret is where your thumb is going. And it will take practice. I haven't practiced that for a long time. So not as impossible as you first think. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching.